Welcome to Urban Living with Suwarna. This is your cozy corner in the chaos of city life, where we tune in for soulful chats on travel, nutrition, mental clarity, and simple habits to help you breathe easier, live better, and glow from the inside out. Today's episode is a real gut check, literally. I want to talk about 4 sneaky foods that always make me bloated. And I mean always. These foods just mess with my stomach every single time. Sometimes it even left me wondering whether something else was causing it. That's when I had to really slow down, observe how my stomach felt, and start breaking down ingredients one by one to figure out what was really going on. Also, quick personal update. For a few months now, my health has honestly just not been great. I was waking up tired even after a full night's sleep. And even if I did manage to wake up, my energy would just crash by mid-morning. And I'd find myself reaching for a second cup of coffee just to stay alert. My skin, let's not get there, but it started breaking out in ways it hadn't since my teenage years. And my digestion just felt sluggish 24/7. And I had this constant low-grade bloating that wouldn't go away no matter what I ate. The brain fog was just next level. I'd forget words mid-sentence while I was on a Teams meeting, or walk into a room and completely blank out why I was there in the first place. And emotionally, I just felt off. Anxious one moment, low the next. You know how it goes. I kept telling myself maybe it was stress, or hormones, it has to be hormones. Or maybe I'm severely dehydrated. I haven't been drinking enough water. You know how we justify things in our heads? But deep down, I knew something was up. So I finally got some blood work done. And it confirmed what my body had been trying to tell me all along. So if you're someone who's listening to this podcast and if you can relate to any of the symptoms I've mentioned above, I highly recommend getting a blood test done. In the blood test, it confirmed that my inflammation markers were really high, which means that my body was fighting something constantly. My good cholesterol, which is HDL, was on the lower end, which affects how well your body balances fats and hormones. So if you're someone and if you see your skin has been breaking out, I highly recommend getting your good cholesterol tested. And my TSH levels, that's the hormone that's linked to your thyroid function, by the way, were out of range, which can explain the fatigue, the brain fog, and the mood dips. For women especially, this is a big deal. If you're someone who has or suspects PCOS, that is polycystic ovary syndrome, thyroid function plays a huge role and I highly recommend getting tested for it. So when my TSH came back high, it explained a lot. My body was basically struggling to keep up. And all that constant imbalance can also contribute to a lot of inflammation, hormonal chaos, and yes, persistent bloating. And if your skin has been breaking out, or if you feel that you have far more hair growth than normal, then again, I think TSH, it would be a good recommendation to get tested for your TSH. It made me realize that this wasn't just about food. It was about my entire system being under pressure, constant pressure, and how important it is to support our bodies. Not just with what we eat, but how we rest, how we move, and most importantly, how we manage stress. So I had to take a step back and ask myself, what's actually nourishing me? Not just in theory or according to some trending health post on Instagram or X, but what genuinely helps me feel better in my body. That's when I started paying closer attention to not just how my stomach felt after meals, but to how my energy, skin, and even mood responded right after I'd had a meal. That's how I figured out that some of the foods I thought were harmless or even healthy were actually triggering my bloating all along and keeping my system inflamed. By the way, everything I'm sharing with you today is backed by actual research, not just random internet talk. I'll be linking all the studies I mentioned in the description. So if you're curious or want to geek out on the details, you can check them out there. Let's get into 4 bloat culprits, as I like to call them. First off, button and portobello mushrooms. This might come as a surprise to many, but we're going to start with mushrooms. Now, I love mushrooms. At least I used to. Button mushrooms on pizza, a warm mushroom soup on a rainy day, mushroom wraps, or tossed into sandwiches with some butter. They were such a comfort food for me. But sadly, every single time I ate button or portobello mushrooms, I'd get bloated, crampy, and very uncomfortable. Here's the interesting part. While I was simply researching the ingredients when I was on a rather strict diet, I realized that these mushrooms contain a compound called hydrazines, which are naturally occurring, but have been shown in experimental studies on rats to have potential cancer-causing effects. Now, let me be super clear. These studies were conducted on animals, not on humans, and there is no proof or guarantee that eating button or portobello mushrooms will give you cancer. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that hydrazines are known to be hard to break down. And for people like me with sensitive digestions or leaky gut, or underlying issues like gluten or dairy intolerance, it could even be as simple as an autoimmune disease. These mushrooms can really irritate the gut. I've spoken to friends and even their elderly parents who also feel bloated or crampy after eating them. That said, I also have a friend who eats them all the time and feels totally fine. So this isn't about demonizing mushrooms. It's about listening to your body. For me, once I cut them out of my diet, I felt such a huge difference in how light and clear my digestion felt. Hydrazines are generally considered toxic compounds. They're naturally occurring in portobello or button mushrooms, but they can also be found as byproducts in certain processed foods that can be hard on the gut. So, for instance, once they enter your system, the liver usually breaks them down. And if someone has gut issues, this added detox load can worsen the symptoms. So in leaky gut, for instance, your intestinal lining is already compromised. So compounds like hydrazines can slip through more easily and trigger inflammation or immune reactions in people who suffer from digestion issues. So people with IBS, for instance, tend to have hypersensitive guts. So even small amounts of gut-irritating compounds can cause bloating, cramps, or discomfort. So I recommend for people with IBS or leaky gut, hydrazines probably is not the right food for you because it can increase irritation. That's why if you go to a nutritionist or your doctor, they might recommend avoiding hydrazine-containing foods at least until the gut is healed. So that doesn't mean that you have to stay away from mushrooms throughout your lifetime. That just means you have to avoid them till the time your gut lining is healed. Now, on to the more interesting bit, what I eat instead. Now, just to clarify, I've said it again, not all mushrooms are bad news. In fact, some have been total game changers for me. And I've really leaned into medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane, turkey tail, and oyster mushrooms. While I was doing my research, I realized lion's mane helps a lot with focus and mental clarity, which I really needed during my low energy phases. Did it help? Yes. Did it hurt my digestion? No. So, I can tell you with 100% clarity that this is a mushroom you most definitely need. The second one is turkey tail. While I was researching, I came across another mushroom that is one of the healthiest things you can include in your diet. Turkey tail mushroom has been studied for its immune-supporting and even anti-cancerous properties for years. It's one of the mushrooms that you should include in your diet. Turkey tail mushrooms are rich in something called polysaccharopeptides, PSK and PSP for short. These compounds are thought to boost the immune system by increasing the activity of natural killer cells and T cells. By the way, these are the same cells which help the body fight abnormal or cancerous cells. They have been used in cancer treatment, especially in Japan and China, for years. In Japan, PSK from turkey tail is an approved adjunct therapy for certain cancers, trick and colorectal. It's been given with chemotherapy to improve survival rates and reduce recurrence of certain cancers, which is rather amazing. It not only improves your immune function in cancer patients, but it also supports the microbiome, which is again tied to immunity. I want to be clear, it's important to note it's not a standalone cancer cure. It's just been used as a complementary therapy to support the immune system in recovery against cancer. When I started adding turkey tail tea into my routine, I didn't notice anything dramatic right away. But for a few weeks, I realized my digestion felt a lot smoother, less bloating and more regular. The biggest plus was every single time I had the tea, I wasn't bloated. That's because the prebiotic fibers were feeding the good bacteria in my gut. And that really helped relieve the IBS symptoms that I had been feeling for weeks. 70 to 80% of the immune system lies in your gut, and it relies on good bacteria to keep things running smoothly. That's why what you eat directly affects your immunity. If you're constantly feeding your gut junk, you're starving the good bacteria that protects you. So for me, I keep it balanced. I never say no to cheat meals. But whenever I do have a cheat meal, I make sure that my next meal is clean and nourishing. That way I avoid the guilt and stay motivated. Next up, raw cruciferous veggies. We're talking broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, bok choy, arugula, spinach, especially when used raw in salads or smoothies. These were everywhere on social media for a while, and everyone was blending them into green smoothies or loading them into raw bowls. Every single time I opened my Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, there she was, or someone, some nutritionist or health guru or detox gurus as we like to call them, blending them into smoothies. And if you ever go to the comment section of these videos or shorts and there's someone sharing their experiences trying out these so-called recipes, you'd see not everyone had a good experience. And I was one of them. I mean, I would get up in the morning and then blend my spinach with my banana and take my smoothie, drink it on the commute on my way to the office. And I thought to myself, gosh, I had a green detox smoothie. Shouldn't I be feeling better? But no, I was uncomfortable throughout the day. I was uncomfortable during drinking my detox shake. I was uncomfortable afterwards. And I had this constant bloat that just wouldn't go away. So I had to sit down on my laptop and do some research and visit numerous nutritionists, figure out what was wrong because my health was declining day by day. And I couldn't understand what led to my stomach being so upset every single time. For weeks, I had this uncomfortable digestion and I had to skip my office at least few times in the span of a few months. So that's where I realized, and the same thing is what my doctor confirmed, that for someone like me, like I mentioned, I have IBS, drinking your raw vegetables or eating them in a salad might not be the best option. And here's the thing why. While these are packed with fiber, vitamins, and all the good stuff, the raw cruciferous veggies also contain something called raffinose, which is a complex sugar that our bodies really struggle to digest, especially if you're someone who struggles with leaky gut or has constant digestion issues. Raffinose is simply a very hard complex to break down by our bodies in the small intestine. So this undigested sugar or raffinose will then reach the large intestine, where it will be fermented by gut bacteria, thereby producing a lot of gas that can cause abdominal discomfort, bloating, etc. Especially if you're someone who has high TSH levels that's linked to hypothyroidism, again PCOS. Because again, these compounds also contain something called myrosinase and several other enzyme inhibitors. To put it simply, these can interfere slightly with your iodine uptake. and your thyroid hormone production if eaten in very large raw quantities. It's not an issue if you cook them or eat them in moderate amounts. But if you already suffer from thyroid issues, then eating raw vegetables might not be the best option for you. For me, the worst offender was raw kale or spinach in a smoothie. It always seemed like the right choice, super green, loaded with nutrients. But every time I drank it, again, I'd just feel sluggish throughout the afternoon. So even while I was making sandwiches, I was often a fan of just loading up on green veggies. While it was super light and healthy, but it would give me this weird combination of queasiness and bloating that just wouldn't go away. Almost like my gut was confused about what to do with it. So, what did I do instead? Instead of cutting them out and just tossing them into my salads, I just changed how I prep them. Now, just to put it simply, I still eat all my green veggies. I just prep them a bit differently like I used to. So now I just steam them or roast them. Because if you want to really help your body, then cooking will help break down those hard to digest sugars and make these veggies much, much gentler on the stomach. So if I'm feeling cozy, I'll just boil them down and blend them into a warm soup. And that really helps, especially while I'm menstruating. They're super easy to digest and honestly just so comforting. I can't mention enough how much I love my green soups. On a rainy day while I'm menstruating, they honestly help my body so much. So yeah, it's not about avoiding healthy foods. It's about making them work for you, for your body, and not against it. So next time you want to eat your greens, just try boiling them and then making them into a great healthy recipe. And tell me if it makes a difference to you and your body. Now, let's talk about cooking oils. This is by far one of my favorite topics to talk about. I can talk about cooking oils for hours. For instance, I live in India, and in a typical Indian household, you would say that we make questionable choices when it comes to cooking oils. For instance, my grandmother would cook with mustard oil almost every single day. And my grandfather insisted that using mustard oil in a cooking really enhanced the taste and brought out the flavors. And as a child, I had severe health issues. For instance, I had a condition called seborrheic dermatitis, wherein I was heavily bullied in school because of my dandruff issues. Even though I didn't have any skin issues per se, but this was the time when I had to go to a doctor and actually got diagnosed with something called IBS. Only when I left home to go pursue my graduation, I realized that I was living on my own and I had switched to a different oil, which really helped with my health issues back then. For instance, mustard oil, which is used in majority of Indian or rather Asian households, contains a large amount of erucic acid, a fatty acid associated with several cardiovascular diseases. This evidence is what prompted the US Food and Drug Administration, which is FDA in short, to ban the use of mustard oil for cooking altogether. However, in Australia, New Zealand, and several European countries, they've established upper limits for tolerable intake of mustard oil. In contrast, mustard oil is one of the most popular cooking oils in Asia, particularly in India, where it is recommended as a heart healthy oil by the Lipid Association of India, LAI in short. What a contrast, isn't it? This conflict between various guidelines, we're talking about US or India, warrants clarification, particularly because use of mustard oil in cooking is increasing among both Americans and Indian immigrants, despite the FDA ban on human consumption of mustard oil, which is crazy because we rely on our government, we rely on scientific data to tell us, hey, this is healthy, this is unhealthy. So at the end of the day, think about it, question yourselves, who do you go to? Because one government is telling you something entirely different, wherein the other is actually promoting it. One government is telling you, hey, this is good for your heart, and the other one is providing documents stating that, hey, if you consume this oil, this is going to affect your heart, and this is going to give you several heart issues. So who do you trust? I'll tell you. You do your own research, you read the papers, and then you make an assumption, or rather not an assumption, you make a choice based on facts. And I'll tell you something even better. Every time you make a change for better, you would see the results. The key is figuring out which foods fuel you and which ones don't. And that brings me to the ominous oils that you need to watch out for. So right now, you need to go to your pantry right now and see if you're using any of these oils. And if you are, the right thing would be to throw them out of your kitchen pantry because they don't deserve to be there. First one, canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, vegetable oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, grapeseed oil, rice bran oil, mustard oil. If you're using any of these oils in your cooking on everyday basis or even occasionally, this is something you need to reconsider because these oils are all known to causing inflammation in your blood vessels, but are also constantly aggravating your risk for several types of cancer. While a handful of sunflower seeds or peanuts or even corn on the cob may be perfectly healthy, there is no safe level of consumption for any of these oils when industrially extracted from their original food sources and heated to high temperatures. This is really, really important to remember. And here's what I've learned over time. When these oils are heated at high temperatures, they can actually become unstable and trigger inflammation in the body. And these oils are regularly served to us in restaurants, where processing and poor storage methods like being left out in warm kitchen environment for months and heating and reheating and then again reheating make these highly susceptible fats go bad. Most restaurants now fry and saute foods in them, reusing oil over and over again, further damaging them and damaging you in the process. French fries, shrimp tempura, those delicious beer battered chicken fingers, all these are vehicles for these biochemically mutated oils and for massive amounts of dangerous compounds called, you guessed it, aldehydes. Aldehydes are byproducts of fat oxidation and have been found in elevated amounts in Alzheimer patients. Aldehyde exposure resulting from consuming rancid oils directly impairs cells' ability to regenerate energy. What does this mean? Ever wondered after your really heavy meal from KFC, you just all of a sudden feel sluggish and just can't get up, feel like sleeping straight off the bat? Well, this is pretty bad news for your brain, which is the chief energy consumer in your body. Cottonseed, canola, safflower, sunflower, soy oils, all are bad news and are hidden virtually anywhere manufacturers can squeeze them. In all, our use of these oils have skyrocketed 200 to 1,000 fold in the last century itself. The later figure is being the case for soy. These oils now make up 8 to 10% of total caloric intake for Americans and Indians, up from almost zero at the turn of the century. Mind-boggling, isn't it? One of the most recently asked questions is, I thought canola oil was healthy because it contains omega-3s. This is one of the most important questions many people might have, that hey, these oils, well as mass-produced and cheap as they might be, they also contain something called omega-3, so aren't they healthy? It's a good question. The answer to this question lies in this amazing book called Genius Foods, which is a New York Times bestseller, and I highly, highly recommend reading this book. So the author, Max Lugavre, he answers it pretty well, and this is what he says. Canola oil is highly processed. While it does contain a relatively high amount of omega-3s compared to other oils, omega-3s are even more vulnerable to oxidation than omega-6s. The processing of canola oil creates just as many oxidative byproducts, including trans fats, which damage your blood vessels and your brain cells. Now, we've talked about all the kind of oils that we should stay away from. Let's just talk about oils and fats that I consider as better choices, especially for higher heat or regular cooking. So, for the past few years now, maybe 5 or 6, the only oil I use for high heat cooking is cold pressed coconut oil. Hands down, it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. If you are looking for a replacement, I think cold pressed coconut oil would be such a game changer for you. It's more stable at high heat, and it's also great for people with severe digestive issues. I'm not saying you have to throw out your sunflower oil today, but just start noticing how your body responds. Sometimes it's not the food itself, but how we're preparing it that makes all the difference. If specifically speaking for Indian cooking, if you're looking an oil for your tadka or high heat cooking, the best option would be ghee. It has a very high smoke point and it's absolutely amazing. It can also be used as a good replacement for butter in many recipes. The third oil, which again has a high smoke point and is pretty great for frying, sauteing, roasting, anywhere you need a stable oil, would be avocado oil. This oil is something that I've used a lot of times in the past, and anytime I feel I need a change, I always switch between avocado oil and coconut oil. And I can say for a fact that all these three options, be it avocado oil, your ghee, or coconut oil, are absolutely amazing options for your high heat cooking needs. So next time, instead of reaching for the usual refined oils, try switching between these. They're much less refined, more stable, and heated, and trust me, your body will thank you for the difference. Let's talk about fourth sneaky food. I guess everyone is aware of this one, and it's no other than whey protein. It's everywhere, every fitness influencer swears by it, and honestly, I used to be one of those people who thought, okay, this is the cleanest, fastest way to get my protein in. And sure, whey has its benefits. It's a complete protein, it's fast absorbing, but here's the catch. If you're dairy sensitive or lactose intolerant like I am, it's just not your friend. It's like my gut knew, no matter what the label said. That is what I was dealing with. I was dealing with dairy. I remember mixing a scoop into my smoothie post-workout and feeling like I needed to lie down instead of feeling energized. I was bloated beyond belief, and over time I realized this small everyday choice was just contributing to a lot of inflammation, not to mention gut issues that I kept brushing off as random. Let's talk about how whey protein affects people with lactose intolerance. Whey protein is nothing but a byproduct of cheese making. Since it comes from cheese, it naturally contains lactose. People who are lactose intolerant don't produce something called lactase. Now, lactase is an enzyme that breaks down lactose in our small intestine. So without lactase, lactose passes on to the large intestine undigested. This in turn gives rise to a lot of gas, bloating, cramps, and diarrhea. Cramps, diarrhea, bloating were one of my few side effects while I was on whey protein. It is important to understand that not all whey protein are unequal. Like for instance, whey concentrate is a type of whey protein that has the highest lactose. So if you are lactose intolerant, maybe this is the one that you should stay away from. Whereas whey isolate is slightly more filtered and it contains very little lactose. Many lactose intolerant people will tolerate it. This was the one that I had personally ordered and that I was taking. The third one is whey hydrolysate. It's a pre-digested protein, usually even easier to digest than whey isolate. The next one is lactose-free protein powders. Those are simply plant-based proteins that are made out of pea, soy, rice, etc. These are the safest if intolerance is highly severe. This was my case since I'm highly intolerant to whey protein. So I usually go with lactose-free protein powders altogether. Now, whey protein can upset lactose intolerant people because it still contains milk sugar. But the severity depends on the type of whey and the person's tolerance level. So it's important to understand your tolerance level. Doesn't mean just because you're intolerant, you should stay away from it altogether. I mean, you can, that would be the ideal scenario. But if you feel still feel like this is something you can take. So the only way to do that is by listening to your body. Just so you don't have any of the side effects I mentioned earlier, you can still be on whey protein and reap its benefits. But if you feel it's affecting you negatively in any which way, if you feel that you're slightly more bloated, or if you have diarrhea, or if your cramps are more severe, just look out for a few side effects here and there. Or even if you're nauseous, might be a good idea to maybe take a break and perhaps try better protein powders out there. So let's talk about what I use instead. For a few years now, I've been loving Sun Warrior's vegan protein. It's clean, plant-based, doesn't make me feel like I just swallowed a rock. Plus, it blends well into smoothies and gives me a nice boost post-workout. I have literally no cramps, no diarrhea, and I've been using it for so many years I've lost count. So if you're looking for an alternative, I highly, highly suggest Sun Warrior's protein. The second one is Tropieka's lean protein. It is safe to mention that this was the one that I specifically ordered from Canada, so I'm not too certain if this is available in India. But Tropieka's lean protein is dairy-free. It's also lactose-free because it's plant-based. It uses a tri-blend of pre-sprouted brown rice, pumpkin seed protein, and they explicitly list it as no dairy, no gluten, dairy-free, soy-free, vegan-friendly on Amazon and their website. I absolutely love these two brands. So people with lactose intolerance, it should be a safe option. Guys, everyone's gut is a little different. So the goal isn't to fear food, but to get curious about how it makes you feel. And remember, you don't have to wait for a doctor to tell you your gut isn't happy. Your body whispers before it screams. Bloating, fatigue, skin issues, hair fall, these all are little signs worth listening to. So make sure you're listening to your body and feeding it the right protein. So, if you like this episode or related to any of it, share it with a friend who's always bloated after lunch. And email me your go-to bloat-free meals at suwarnahoshi1515@gmail.com. I would love to read your emails and connect with you one-on-one. Alright guys, that's it for today's episode. Thank you for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something new. Stay healthy, stay happy, and stay sound. Hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. And if this one resonated with you, give it a like. See you next time.